Hi, I'm Lori Zook. Join me today for a special feature at the Lake Hopatcong Historical Museum, where I'll be joined by Richard Willis, volunteer and trustee. So come on in and we'll meet Richard. Hi Richard, how are you? Nice to meet you.
Thank you very much for coming today.
Thank you. Are you ready to start a special tour today of the museum?
Most definitely.
Terrific. Thank you. I'm sitting here on Joe Cook's special trick bench. People would sit down on it, and when he would flip a switch, the whole thing would just move and stun them like it's doing to me right now. Richard, tell me a bit about Joe Cook's famous piano here.
Well, Joe Cook was a entertainer, a vaudevillian movie star. Had his house over in Gessler's Cove, now Davis Cove, on the West Shore, and at his house he had this piano. It was his guest book. All of his guests came and signed the piano. His famous and not so famous people.
Tell me about some of the famous people that signed it.
Babe Ruth was one of the famous people. Capper, which was his partner in the act, he's on here. There's some of the Marx Brothers are on it, and so many I really can't enumerate them all.
Wow, so I think it's worth just a visit to see the piano and all the names of the people that signed it.
Definitely. And Joe Cook starred in 2 movies, which we do have clips here of. And his house was called Sleepless Hollow. Always having a party over there, and he had a golf course. And the last hole, you had to make a hole-in-one. If you got on the green, it would go in the cup. It would go down through a tube into the house, and you would get a certificate stating you've made a hole-in-one at the golf course.
Wow, sounds like a lot of fun. Well, let's go on to the next room. Okay, you ready? Okay. Richard, I understand this is called the Passage to Progress room about the Morris Canal. Can you
That's correct.
Tell me a bit about it?
This room shows a representation of the whole Morris Canal, but it specializes on Lake Hopatcong, since we were the main water source for that canal.
Okay.
And we had, it was a very important means of transportation during World War I. The Army had contingency camped out here to guard the dam and the lock so they wouldn't be exploded by the wrong people. There was a frying pan here that we'll have a shot of that was used for the cooking, and the thing's about 36 inches in diameter.
This has been cooking for a lot of people.
Yes. In front of us is a model of the Morris Canal representing a portion of the canal west of Lake Hopatcong. And the turbine house is on the left, which was used to run the canal boats up and down the inclined plane, and there's a lock on the right-hand side.
Okay. All right, well, thanks. Let's go on to the next room.
Okay.
Okay, Richard, we're now in the room entitled Simpler Times. I understand it's a hodgepodge room that has a whole bunch of different things in it, so why don't you tell us a little bit about it?
Right. This room covers a little bit of everything from bike clubs to land development, iron ore, ice industry, steamboats, railroads. There's a little bit of everything. And on our land development, we have a display of different land companies over to your right. And it shows the prices of some of the lots that were like $400 for a building lot with a bungalow on it. Other areas of the, like the railroad, shows the railroads that were never built. There was one that was supposed to run up West Shore, and they got money together and they got paperwork, but that never happened. The railroad came past the museum at Landing and never stopped other than a freight stop until the Central Railroad of New Jersey came into Nolan's Point. And you mean I can bring people in and they'll come here? So they built a railroad station here at Landing and brought people in for the hotels that were being built. The ice and industry with a big one up here at the lake. There was no refrigeration otherwise, and they would harvest ice off the lake. There were 5 commercial ice houses at the lake. 4 of them were in Jefferson Township. And the ice would be brought in and harvested, stored in the ice houses until it was needed, and then it would be sent out by train or the Mars Canal. We do have records that people have told us that it went down to South America, and I've even talked to a gentleman that was in India and saw ice from there. We also have a section on the camps that were here at the lake. We also have at the other end of the room, and we'll see it in a moment, is the aqua elephant from Lee's bathing beach, which is now the Lee's County Marina. This was basically like a big beer barrel with a tail and a head and a snout on it, and it was anchored, and the kids would try to go out and swim up to it and then try to sit on it, and they said it was slippery, and a few people could actually stand up on it. I myself know it's very slippery. I carried it in the rainstorm here. Let's see here, also some of the local businesses. Stone's Dairy was one of the bigger ones around here. We have artifacts from that. And I think we might go on to another part of the building now.
Okay, very good. Let's go. Okay, Richard, we're now in the famous folks room, but before we get to that, tell me about the 50th anniversary.
The Lake Hopatcong Historical Museum's anniversary is August the 10th. And the group of people originally met in 1950 at the Langdon Arms, now Gatwin's 2. They were concerned that the history was disappearing as the older people were dying and things were being thrown away, and they got together and created the Historical Society. About 40 years ago, they procured the building, and we've been expanding ever since. And as the older people die, we get more and more material in.
Okay, now tell me about the famous folks room. Because I know Joe Cook is profiled downstairs. I know Lotta Crabtree is also profiled
Yes.
up here. Maybe you can tell her a bit about her and some of the other famous folks.
Right. Joe Cook would be normally up here, but since we had the piano given to us, and I didn't want to carry it up the stairs, he has his room downstairs for at least a season or two. But Joe Cook would have been up here. Lotta Crabtree with a child star that moved to California by way of boat, mule back over the Isthmus of Panama to California to find her husband, or her father rather, and they opened up a boarding house. Her father was the head of Wandering Lust. He was out prospecting and so on. He was never around a whole lot, but they would take in boarders, and the boarders were actresses and actors, and they taught Lotta how to dance and talk and so on. And she went out during the gold rush days to the mining camps, and she would entertain for them. And she would portray quite often male parts. If the hemline was at the ankle, hers was at her calf. If it was at the knee, it was above the knee. She was always ahead of her time, smoked big black cigars. Her house was at Mount Arlington, still there. It's been restored beautifully. When she died, I believe it was 1942, she was the richest woman in the United States. Now, we also had other people like Hudson Maxim here. Hudson Maxim was a inventor of different gunpowders, guns, and so on. He was into munitions. He blew his hand off, actually, up here. Worked over at Atlas Powder Company, or the Forsyth plant. Didn't trust the doctors. So he got on the, wrapped it up, no hand, wrapped it up, got on the train, went into New York to the doctors. Of course, the hand couldn't be saved. He always had a cork rubber hand on the thing. He was great friends with Thomas Edison. We have people, Colonel G.G. Green, he's in this case here. And he had as my grandmother would say, snake oil salesman. He did patent medicines. And we have August flowers, and we have bocce syrup. And on some of these boxes, it actually tells what's in there. Now, the August flowers have been in the museum for years, and we didn't heat up until maybe 10 years ago. Never froze. Some of the ingredients was, of course, alcohol and some types of narcotics. You felt great, and these things advertised headache, women's problems, backache, you name it, it would fix it. Some of the other people we had, Milton Berle came here to the lake, and there has been rumors that Frank Sinatra came, but we haven't had any proof of that yet. And we had poets. We had Rex Beach, which was a writer. He was here. Bert Lahr was here in the summer times. And some of you people might not recognize the name, but if you said the Cowardly Lion of the Wizard of Oz movie, that was Bert. And let's see, we had Jeanette MacDonald would come up. And not in this room particularly, but we did have Peter Frampton up here at Birchen Island, and that's the room we'll be going to in a little while.
Okay. All right, well, let's head over to Jewel of the Mountains next. Okay. Richard, now we're in the Jewel of the Mountains room, which is about the Great Hotel era. Okay, why don't you tell us a bit about that?
Well, that was one of the catchwords that one of the hotel promoters put out in the early days. It was the place to be. It was a simple day's trip from New York by train, or a little longer if you came by canal. In its heyday, it ended up with some 40 hotels in the at the lake. The more expensive ones were up on the mountains and tops, and the cheaper ones were down at the lake's edge. Of the hotels, there were the cheap kind. I mean, you could stay at the the Breslin or the Alamac, which were both the same hotel. That was the largest at the lake, some 300 rooms. And they had electricity before Dover even did. They had their own Ball steam plant there to create the electricity. But then there was a lot of people who couldn't afford that, and there would be the cheaper hotels like let's see here, Nolan's Point Villa, which became Bryant's Villa, and eventually Somahovie Hotel, which a lot of people might remember. There was the Sunnyside over at Nolan's Point, which was a family run by the Smith family, and home-cooked meals, and they were open year-round. A lot of the hotels did close in the wintertime. But we had something very unique behind us here, the Castle Edwards. It was built as a boathouse and some tents and a couple of hammocks. Business was great. They added to it. They put in a rudimentary hotel. And as big business picked up, they went right up the mountain side with the hotel. It looked like stone, but it was pressed tin. It was over our post and beam construction in 1931 when it burnt. It burnt very well. We also had one hotel. We did have the problem with the fire, so we had one hotel built in 1911, the Colonial Inn, as a fireproof hotel. It's concrete and it's cinder block. It did not burn down, so it should still be here, correct?
I believe so.
Well, in 1912, it was gone. They didn't even have the landscaping done when it blew up. They used acetylene gas to light the building, to heat with, and to cook with, which they manufactured themselves. Something went wrong when they're recharging the system, and it went.
Wow. Are there any buildings still existing today in the hotel?
Yes, the Justamere Lodge over on Point Pleasant is still there, which is a private home. The Henderson Cove Hotel, which became eventually the Maximum Yacht Club, is still there as a private home. Over in River Styx is the Greencroft, which is still there, and that's the fate of that we don't know yet. They're trying to make it into condominiums, and they're having all sorts of trouble with that. Let's see, over in Woodport we have the old Orchard Inn, which is now the Willow Lake Day Camp. And there may be one or two other ones they're all private homes. There's nothing left except for the Arrowcrest Lodge, which is a residential motel now.
Well, let's continue on. Thanks, Richard. Richard, now we're entering the Bertrand's Island room, my personal favorite room, and I understand you can tell us a bit of information about the amusement parks and also Alvin and Shorty?
Yes. Well, this is Alvin. He was Walking Charlie from Bertrand Island Amusement Park. It was sort of a figure-8 chain that he was on, like a bicycle chain, and he'd go in and out of doors. And the idea was to knock his hat off. And if you knocked it off, then you would get points and you'd eventually get a prize. Shorty belonged to the shooting gallery, and when he was offered to us, they showed us a picture of him, and he only looked to be about this big. He weighs over 100 pounds, maybe 150. He's sheet steel. But the idea was a heart shot would be so many points, and a head shot would be so many points. And there's a steel ball in there that would close a relay, and it would ring bells or lights so they knew which you got on it.
Okay.
But Bertrand Island has been, well, actually it was an island when the Bertrand family lived there. After Mr. Bertrand's death, the house burnt in a few years after, and then there was a gentleman's club there. And then Mr. Lou Krause from Prospect Point moved down and opened a hotel, the Hollywood Hotel. And it was unique. It was shaped like a horseshoe, square horseshoe with a dining hall and dance floor in the middle, and it was like motel units of today. But he found it was easier to entertain people for the day than it was on the long period. And he eventually phased out the hotel and opened up an amusement park. There had been an early bathing beach there. And you could get there by boat, by trolley. There was the trolley line that ran in, the Marsh County Traction Company. You could come by car. And as things developed, he kept adding things. Like the very first carousel came from Nolan's Point, and eventually they got the Ilion Supreme over there. And there was not just amusements of rides and games. We did have live talent that came. We had Dean Martin at one time sing there as a I can't remember his other name. He wasn't using Martin at the time. But we had Sally Rand. She was a famous fan and bubble dancer. We had Peter Frampton, as I mentioned when we were out with the famous people. He came here in, I believe, 1977 and played at the casino there. And we have a lot of people still connected to Bertrand Island that come to our museum, and they keep bringing things to us. One of our later pieces was we got the Aerojet, which a gentleman saved and mounted on a trailer, so we need that for parades and so on. He brings it out. We just had the Wally the Whale ride reconditioned, and it was in the Lake Hopatcong 100th anniversary for the Yacht Club boat parade, and it made it all the way across the lake by itself, though it was going around circles and backwards once in a while. But there are other artifacts we've come up with, even from the hotel, the Hollywood Hotel. They had a game wheel like the Candyland here that was used, which we have downstairs. It's not on display currently.
Well, actually, you've also written a book about Lake Hopatcong.
Well, the museum has done one on Hopatcong for the 100th anniversary in 1998. They did one for the Bertrand Island Amusement Park, as well as a video cassette, which we're working on a DVD on that. They did one on Then and Now. The latest book they have out is, I believe, 100 Years of Summers, which is the anniversary book for the Yacht Club. And personally, I've done the one on Lake Hopatcong Jefferson Township on Lake Hopatcong, which came out in 2001.
Thank you very much for the tour. You've made the history of Lake Hopatcong very interesting. If anybody would like to come and visit, how can they call the museum?
Well, you either can contact us by telephone, which that number escaped me right now, but also we're on the Hopatcong webpage. You put down Hopatcong I believe org/museum, and we'll come up, or any search engine will come up with Lake Hopatcong Historical Museum.
Terrific. Thanks again for joining me today. Thank you. I hope you enjoyed our special tour today of the Lake Hopatcong Historical Museum. And thanks for joining us. For Jefferson Highlights Community Television, I'm Lori Zook.